Well, we're here today interviewing members of the band Isotope, who will be playing at the Louisville Jazz Society show on March 27th, 2022 at 7 p.m. at the Melwood Center. Great to sit down with you guys. It's a real privilege to sit down and talk to you guys about about the music you'll be playing and the music that you love. So how'd you guys get interested in jazz, listening and playing jazz? Because, you know, on the radio, this is not what you don't hear much jazz on the radio. So how'd you guys get interested in this type of music?
Because I'll start. So I got interested essentially through middle school. There was a jazz band that Miss Lyles used to run, Beth Lyles, big music person here. Once I got into that band, I wanted to kind of like discover some of the music. And so I had the very great privilege of seeing Jazz at Lincoln Center. They came to Louisville, I think I was in 7th grade. And that was just obviously an incredible concert. And I was sitting there and I remember telling my mom, like, yeah, this is what I want to do. This is amazing, you know. Some real like soul heart music, you know.
Cool. So, how about you, Genesis?
Well, my grandmother grew up listening to that, and so that's obviously what I grew up listening to as well. Right. So I guess I just gravitated towards that.
Right. Great. Mm-hmm. Colin?
I had a little bit of both because I also was in that same jazz band at No. So I had a little bit of that, and I played a lot around the house when I grew up as well. And the other thing that helped a lot is for me, it was like a good way to shift my classical training that I had earlier in my life to this type of music that gives me more freedom and more opportunity to play what's in my head. So that's it for me.
So how'd you pick your instrument? How'd you end up playing piano?
I knew someone else who played piano in elementary school, and I got the idea from him and Quillen Wilson. And then Quillen Wilson stopped playing piano. But I didn't stop playing piano. So, yes. And I can play more than one note at once, which is really nice. It's a perk.
How about you, Genesis? How'd you get interested in the saxophone?
There's no real good answer to that. Just in elementary school, they write about the instruments, the letters choose, and it's kind of a coin toss.
Really?
Yeah.
but you stuck with it and like it now a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. How about you? How about why the trombone, Zach?
So kind of again from my mom, I was kind of torn in middle school when I chose going to know you have to choose related arts. So I chose band, and I was kind of stuck between percussion and trombone. And there are a lot of people, there's a crazy concept, a lot of 6th graders want to hit things. So there are a lot of people that want to be percussionists, and trombone is not as popular an instrument, so my mom kind of leaned me towards there. She showed me a trombone shorty as well, and another phenomenal musician. And that just kind of got me interested, and as soon as I sat down and played it the first time, I fell in love. And I was like, this is definitely the one for me.
Great. So what about, you were listening to jazz at home, Genesis. What kinds of jazz were you listening to? What are your influences on your playing? Teachers, musicians that you've heard? What shaped your sound today?
I would say everything that I've listened to. I wouldn't limit myself to one music. A lot of people say jazz, and what they assume is a ride cymbal and a hi-hat on 2 and 4, but jazz to me just means extended freedom of expression in music. I would say everything that I listen to is developed into what I am now and how I play and how I hear music. Right.
But is there any particular saxophone player who you kind of heard and said, I want to sound like that?
Well, the first time, this was at a Jamie Abersol Summer Workshops, and I met Bill Evans, saxophone player. And he was the first person, because it's hearing him sound and the way he played, it really made me say, man, I want to be good at doing that.
Cool. Colin, what
I'm kind of in the same boat as far as the idea that jazz is kind of an open-ended thing, which we'll get to more later. As far as jazz piano influences, one of my first ones was McCoy Tyner. But yeah, it's pretty much just a combination of everything else I listened to, but McCoy was a big early influence, I think, from us.
How about you, Zach? Any musicians, teachers that had a big influence on you?
Man, that's a really hard question. I have to say, when I was younger, I really liked Bill Watrous' sound. It's very like smooth tone. But I think I take most of my influence not from trombone players. I actually like particularly Robert Glasper's music. really speaks to me. Big shout out to Colin for introducing me to that. Robert Glasper, and then as far as like, you know, horns, definitely Roy Hargrove, and their whole vibe is just like really great for me.
Cool, cool. Great influence.
Should have mentioned Roy Hargrove and Robert Glasper by name, but yes.
Well, can you tell me a little bit about how this group Isotope came about?
Yeah, so we've actually all known each other essentially like just kind of through our childhood. So I've actually known Colin, as you would know. I know Colin, I've known Colin since kindergarten, and we grew up together, and we both kind of picked up instruments, and we would just play together all the time. And Colin actually met Genesis at an Ibersold camp, like, how many years ago? I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah. And he was like, man, you gotta play with this guy Genesis. And so we would get together, and we would just go to Colin's house and just like play music for like 2 or 3 hours, and just we do that all the time. We still do that. And so when Colin kind of came to this, he had like a gig that he wanted to put a group together for, and we were his first calls, I guess, and it works out. We all play I think part of the reason that we like play, like, we don't have to think as hard when we're thinking about like arrangements and ideas and like the progression of the song, because we all have just known each other so long that it just kind of works out. Right. And it makes it very like free.
So tell me about the other players in the band. You got a bassist?
Cameron's just generally like
Cameron
Gooden. Generally is probably one of the most solid musicians in the U of L jazz program overall, and he's also, Zach and I have known him for many years. He went to know as well. So yeah, I kind of call him for it because he's really good. And Jeremy I met around the same time I met Genesis, actually, right around when I first started Rockman, and I met him right around when I started playing jazz, and it's the same story. He's just a really good musician. So I just would pick the best people I could think of.
Right.
So yeah.
And you gelled together really well.
Mm-hmm.
That's good to hear. I'm looking forward to hearing you on the end of the month. So can you tell me a little bit, and tell our potential audience a little bit about what they're going to hear on the 27th of March?
Yes. So to put together a set list, I pretty much thought I was just going to go through basically just stuff I've been listening to lately. So it's going to be a mix of different music. It's going to have some regular jazz, some straight ahead jazz if you want to call it that, but it's going to have a lot of R&B influences, because that's kind of a thing I've been getting into lately, as well as them.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think is actually kind of cool. I was talking to Zach like a few days ago about it. We kind of realized we've had similar musical progressions this year, but like in different places. You know, so I think this is a good play to represent.
So Zach, you're up at the IU Bloomington music program, right?
Yeah.
And so we're going to hear that on
Hopefully.
on 27th.
In particular, some stuff that he's also gotten me into, including some Sade and Mint Condition is going to be we're going to do some arrangements of that. So that'll be cool. So shout out to you for introducing that music to that stuff.
So will we hear the Robert Glasper, Roy Hargrove influences as well?
Absolutely.
Yes. We're going to do a Roy Hargrove, a song by Roy Hargrove actually called Soulful. And
such a good song.
Well, the main Robert Glasper influence is actually the Sade song, because he did a cover of it on one of his albums. It's called Cherish the Day. Is that the name of that song?
Yeah.
I want to do it more like the original. Just that, it's the influence is still there. The influence is still there.
Right. Well, really looking forward to hearing you guys. It sounds like you'll be playing music from from the history of jazz, really, like from the straight ahead stuff up to the present. It'll be really nice to hear those other influences in your playing. So I really look forward to it. Thanks so much for sitting down with us.
Yeah, thank you.